Let's open up the mailbag. We got questions about Aaron Neesmith, all kinds of trades, including moving up in the draft. Should they do it? It's all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Beantown, be ever ready. It's the C's. Who else could it be? What they gon' say now? Screaming like JT Karalis. Recap the madness every game, every practice. Primetime Depp and D White on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked On Celtics pod, home of the winners.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. It's right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day, and I got you covered Monday through Friday with a free podcast. It drops directly to your device, so make sure you're subscribed on whichever podcasting app you want. It's there. It's free. It's daily. It's on YouTube. Watch it there if you'd like. Get into the comments section. Share your thoughts there with me. I'm John Karalis. I've been covering the Celtics for about 20 years now, doing it now as a beat writer for Boston Sports Journal and the author of a couple of different Celtics books. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Mailbag day. Haven't done this in a little while. I'm going to do it a lot more regularly here as we get into the off season. I normally would do the alliterative thing and say Mailbag Mondays, but I don't like to say, okay, Mondays are always going to be mailbags because something could happen, a trade could happen, all that stuff. But just johnkaralis.com/mailbag, johnkaralis.com/mailbag to submit your questions. That's the way I organize them. So johnkaralis.com/mailbag to get your questions in. And I got a lot of questions here. Later on, we'll talk about changes to salary structures. And I have an idea about that that's tied to the awards. We'll get to moving up in the draft. We'll talk about Peyton Pritchard and all sorts of trades. But I want to do a little something different because I do a weekly Q&A for the subscribers on Boston Sports Journal. And I wanted to start with this right away for a number of different reasons. But the question that came in there, one of the questions was, Aaron Neesmith looked amazing last night. Why did Boston give up on him so quickly? And I wanted to throw that in there because, first of all, hilarious that the Knicks had a seemingly insurmountable lead in game one of the conference finals. They blew it. They went into overtime. They lost in overtime. All of this talk that I've heard about Tom Thibodeau out-coaching Joe Mazzulla and how Joe Mazzulla should have done X, Y, and Z, and then all of a sudden it turns around and happens to the genius Tom Thibodeau. It's just funny to me that a lot of the criticisms that were levied on Joe Mazzulla turn around and you levy them on Tom Thibodeau. Tibbs was like seen as, well, look how great a coach he is. He outcoached Joe Mazzulla, and it turns around in that first game in the next series, and all the same stuff happens to him, which is just to say, sometimes it happens, right? And it's not really a commentary on the coach. Tom Thibodeau is the same coach he was in the Celtics series. He didn't forget how to coach. So it's just funny. It's just funny to me to see. As to the question of Aaron Neesmith, we all know that after 2 years here in Boston, he wasn't getting the time. The Celtics were at a different stage. I think Aaron Neesmith has been promoted to team captain right now of the all situation matters team. I say it all the time. Situation matters. You take a guy who sucks somewhere and he could be useful somewhere else. You take a guy who's useful somewhere and he could be a star somewhere else. You saw it we saw it with Delano Banton when he went to Portland. You get some opportunity and you're like, well, why couldn't he do that here? Because everybody ahead of him was better than him here. Aaron Neesmith, same idea. Everybody ahead of him here was better than him here. And maybe you can argue he should have played, but under Ime Udoka especially, they were looking for defense, and he was just an out-of-control wrecking ball on defense. We joked about how every time he was out there defending, I gasped. There's at least one moment per game that he played where I gasped and I was like, oh my God, he might be dead. He might be seriously hurt here. And he'd get up and be fine, but I was like, God, this guy is a lunatic. And, credit to him for playing hard, but he was out of control. And at that point, he shot like 27% that season. it wasn't coming together for him. And the Celtics needed somebody that was more win now. So they packaged Neesmith in a trade for Malcolm Brogdon. Makes perfect sense. No one questioned it really at the time. It made Malcolm Brogdon was the sixth man of the year. Now he ended up getting hurt, and that was part of why the Celtics lost that year. If he had been healthy, maybe it would have been a different story in the finals. But the trade for Brogdon made sense. And Neesmith got to go to a team that let him play, that let him figure it out, that let him shoot through some of the slumps. And now look at him. He's not like an all-star, but he played great. He hit, 5 or 6 3-pointers in the fourth quarter. He completely willed the Pacers back to beat the Knicks. And then Tyrese Halliburton took over after that. It was great. It was beautiful. And I'm so happy. I'm really happy for Neesmith. I love it when players, find that situation that works and they thrive. I really am legitimately happy that the trade worked for him, that he's in a place that uses him well, that he had the opportunity, the minutes, and that he's now in a position to thrive. And he basically won Indiana a playoff game. So shout out to Aaron Neesmith. Very happy for him and all of that. All right, let's move on. Matthew asks, how involved will Joe and the rest of the coaching staff be in any decisions or team reconstruction, or is this all Brad's decision? So the coaches are always involved, and Brad will take into account what Joe's evaluation is of certain players. Joe will report to Brad, this player, I feel this. We can do this with him. We can do that with, we can't do that with him, so on and so forth, right? So it's like a status report. Here's what happens if we lose Jrue Holiday. What do you lose? We lose X, Y, and Z. And to be honest, it won't be the stuff that he tells us. It'll be the honest, coach to his boss. Something like, yeah, he might have lost the step, or, I don't trust the shot like I used to, or something like that. I'm just guessing. I'm just saying things as an example. And Brad will take that into account and say, okay, we've got our ranking system. The coach has made his decision. The coach has said, blah, blah, blah. This is where how I feel about the guy. And you try to just deal with that information. And you also explain to your coach, we're going to have to move certain guys. So be aware. It may be, if it comes down to a choice of players, hey, we have 2 trades on the table for Holiday. Would you prefer player X, player Y? And what do you think? And I think Joe would be up to speed as to some of the talks, maybe not blow by blow. Hey, today I talked to, Detroit and we said blah, blah, blah. No, Joe will be involved to a certain degree, but then Brad takes over. But he does have input and may have a vote on certain things, but there are bigger elements. And Joe is very cool with, hey, okay, if that's what you got to do, then give me my team. I will coach up my team and be done with it. So he has a seat at the table, but not maybe not the deciding vote. Next question. Joe says, my personal prediction is that any player with the last name that begins with H will not return on the roster next year. Can you talk about Sam Hauser and what type of return he might be able to fetch on the market? Okay, so H is Holiday, it's Horford, and it's Hauser. Holiday I'm good with. Horford I think will come back, but that is dependent on Jayson Tatum and his injury and whether he'll come back this upcoming season. But I'm still leaning Horford comes back. Hauser, interesting case here, because I don't think a Sam Hauser trade will be what can he get in return. I think a Sam Hauser trade will minimize what the Celtics need to attach to move the salary. Hauser is going to be very tradable. As if you listened to yesterday's podcast with Keith Smith, which I highly recommend because we really get into the nitty gritty of a lot of the trade stuff. It is listen, I understand some people might not have the stomach for it or the wherewithal for it. It can be very deep in the weeds of technical stuff, but we're trying to explain to you the Celtics situation. So I recommend that. But as far as it pertains to Sam Hauser, Hauser fits into the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which I think is going to be like 14 million or so next year, maybe 15, which gives teams the opportunity to use that on Hauser. You can now absorb a player via trade in that. And also maybe you sign a guy instead of you using your biannual exception, which hard caps you, I think, at the first apron or second apron. I've lost track of that one, but it does hard cap you in some way. You don't use your 4 million biannual. You just use the rest of your mid-level and boom, there you go. And using your full mid-level hard caps you as well. But I think it hard caps you at the second apron, which I think most teams will be fine with. So long story short, a Sam Hauser trade, I believe the greatest value to Boston, which is weird to say, but this is what the situation that they're in. I think his greatest value to the Celtics is being tradable into exceptions across the league for nothing and maybe attach a second round pick, which is minimal damage, and you save a fair amount. I'll just say, if you trade Sam into the first, if that's your first move, you have, I'll just do the math right here. $10 million, we'll round it. $5 million is taxed at $875. So right there, that $5 million, you're saving $43.75 million in taxes just for that trade. And then the next $5 million is taxed at $825, and you're saving $41.25 million. So that's $85 million in taxes just by trading Sam Hauser into cap space. If that's your first move and that $10 million comes off the top, you're saving $85 million in taxes. That's your value. We'll come back and talk about more trades, what happens to Peyton Pritchard if Jrue Holiday gets traded, and what happens about salary structures, and can guys restructure all that stuff? Lots of questions. It's all coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Open up that FanDuel app and hop into these NBA playoffs. There's a lot of craziness out there if you were watching that Pacers game. So you can bet on the close of these games. You can bet on fourth quarters. You can bet on which players are going to show up in the biggest moments, and just have all kinds of fun over there at FanDuel. The best part is if you place your first $5 bet and it hits, you can get $200 in bonus bets. So make it a good one. Make it an easy one. Maybe you want to get into baseball and bet on the Red Sox to lose. That's been happening a lot. Whatever it is, you place that first $5 bet. If it hits, you get those $200 in bonus bets. So if you had a hunch that Aaron Neesmith was going to heat up in the fourth quarter, you could have put a couple of bucks on that in the same game parlay, maybe cleaned up just like he did. So go check it out. If you're new to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head on over to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if that wins. Make sure you're using the tools that are available to you to set your limits, set your budgets. Make sure you're only betting what you can afford to lose just in case you go cold. And just have fun. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official betting partner, sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On NBA, Locked On NBA Game Night. It's my night with Jake Madison. I'm recording this show before Minnesota OKC, and then I will be watching Minnesota OKC and talking about it on Game Night with Jake Madison. So go check it out wherever you get your podcasts. Let's return to the mailbag. Again, those questions can come in at johnkaralis.com/mailbag. Tim asks, is it crazy to think the Celtics could become a first apron team this year? Then he proposes a single three-way trade. Makes me think so. Trade Jaylen to Atlanta, Porzingis to Toronto, before the draft. It is, listen, I'm just going to say this. It's not crazy to think anything nowadays. And I'm normally a person who will say, listen, guys, we got to make sure we're keeping it under control here. And there will be certain scenarios. Like, you can't just, you got to be taking into account what the other team wants to do. So trade Jaylen to Atlanta, sure. Kristaps to Toronto, maybe they do that. What are they giving up? Got to take that into account here. But would the Celtics do that? It's not out of the question. Really, almost nothing is out of the question. So make sure you're taking stuff into account. But I'm not going to sit here and poo-poo a lot of these ideas. So could the Celtics become a first apron team? Sure. It's possible that the Celtics could get completely under the tax and not be under any apron. So they so much depends on what Jayson Tatum's recovery is. What's that timeline like? And can the Celtics depend on him to come back? And do they think he's going to come back, or do they feel like making a big swing? And like the biggest swing would be trading Jaylen Brown. If they feel like that's the swing they want to make, then they can make it now and try to duck all the way under everything. So it's not out of the question. Will says, do you think it would be a good move to trade Jrue to let Pritchard take his starting spot? And what do you think happens with Kornet? Now, if they trade Holiday, it's strictly because they are saving money. But yes, Peyton Pritchard slides into the starting spot. I think he is the natural, he's a natural to move up. Now it does depend on how the rest of the summer shakes out, who stays, who goes. How do the Celtics decide to play? You could have a Derek White starting point guard, Jaylen Brown as the 2, and then Tatum as the 3 with, do you keep Porzingis? Do you keep Al Horford? Do you keep Kornet? It's possible to keep Kornet. And you go, who do you acquire? Did you acquire a guy who can play power forward? Or did you acquire a guy who can play small forward? Then you might have White, Jaylen, player X, Jayson, and your remaining center as your starters, and Pritchard continues to come off the bench. Maybe you do Pritchard, White, Jaylen, Jayson, and your center. So there is a world where Pritchard rises up to the starting spot. There is a world where he remains in the 6-man spot. So it depends a lot on what the Celtics do with the rest of their moves. They are going to have to acquire players. They are going to have to bring people back. So how they do that, what players they bring back, the level to which those players are capable of either starting or coming off the bench determines some of this stuff. Luke Kornet, such a coin flip here because he loves it here. No doubt about it. He was just at the Worcester Red Sox game. So he loves it around here. He's comfortable around here. But if somebody gives him $10 million, that's like, congratulations, buddy. That's kind of like a mini Evan Turner to Portland kind of move. Congratulations. Go enjoy that $10 million. If you do $10 million over 2 years, hey, maybe we'll have you back after 2 years. I don't know. But if I don't think the Celtics are going to offer him more than a few million. They can offer him whatever they want. But the money that he turns down, I wouldn't recommend him turning down significant money. I mean, it's life-changing money for him, his family, his kids. You know, you have to do the smart thing. So it's possible that he comes back. We'll see how far under the Celtics get, but this may be the end for Kornet, which would be a shame because I like him. Let's get into one more here from Chris. was wondering what you think about all the second apron salary implications. Looks like Brown and Tatum cashed in just in time with their paydays. Do you think the second apron will start to limit top player salaries, and how will it affect trades? So here's my idea. In fact, I'll tell you this. I'll tease my answer and come back with it. I think the second apron, I don't know if it will, but it should change the system for how players are rewarded for certain postseason awards. I'll talk about that when I come back. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Thank you, and go make your second listen the Locked On NBA Big Board Show. NBA draft expert Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, I can speak, and rumor leading up to the NBA draft. Find Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So the question before the break was, how does the second apron affect player paydays and top player salaries, and how will it affect trades? So I think they do want to temper some of the top salaries, and I think it's twofold. A guy like Jaylen Brown getting the Supermax, I don't think that can happen for much longer. Jayson Tatum, your top player, can get the Supermax. Jaylen, your second best player, I don't think he can get the Supermax. I don't think any, like, if you're just ranking them, I don't think you can go that far. And I think this is part of the goal of the CBA, is to limit some of those top salaries. If a team wants to keep a guy, they're gonna have to like work on these salaries with them. You can work in some incentives, be like, listen, you're not going to get 35% of the cap. We're going to give you 30% of the cap. But if you make an all-NBA team, another all-NBA team, then we'll give you the 35 or something like that. Like, you got to work in more incentives into player contracts. So let's just take Jaylen, for example. You don't just give him the 35%. You say it's 30%, and you have a chance to earn the extra 5 by doing one of the following. You make an all NBA team again, make another one, or make a second team or a first team, or whatever. Maybe it is the Finals MVP. Maybe Jaylen would have earned it anyway, but make it an incentive versus just handing it to him. I think you just have to start structuring these deals differently. If these aprons are there and building a team is going to be prohibitive, then I don't think you just hand out these salaries. Which brings me to, I think maybe they just need to change the structure. Like, a guy making an all defensive team or a third team all NBA. Third team all NBA shouldn't qualify you for a Supermax anymore. But you got to be first team or second team. You got to be, an MVP can do it, right? Defensive player of the year, maybe, but like a defensive player of the year and something else, or you got to up the stakes is my point. You got to raise the bar and not just be like, well, third team all NBA. And I'm not saying like that's nothing, but consider you've now put the 65 game rule in. So guys are getting eliminated left and right. Third team is a little easier to make. Third team is, a couple of guys get hurt, and now your 20th best player in the league, your 22nd best player in the league. Well, if there's a run of injuries, that person sneaks into an all NBA. You're like, oh, well, okay. So Supermax. Well, I think the 20th best player in the league is amazing, but not 35% of the cap amazing. Same as your top 5 players. There's got to be something. There's got to be you got to change that system, because how does it affect trades? It just makes them harder. It's harder to trade these guys. So they need to change how these guys are rewarded for certain things and put it in line with the other rules that have been instituted since. The 65 game rule came after the system for how guys were rewarded for making these teams. And the players would fight this tooth and nail, and they should. I'm a union guy. If I was in the union hearing me talk, I'd be like, no, you can't do that. Can't take away our guys' ability to earn money. But from a team building perspective, I think this is something that both sides need to like sit there and talk about, because, or you come up with some other plan or something where teams at the top can realize like a little bit of relief, but that's not what the league wants. That's not what the league wants. Dylan and Dan have similar questions about the draft. Dylan says, I'm sure you'll go over this at some point, but is it possible for the Celtics to make a trade to the Spurs or the Mavs for a package involving Jaylen Brown for one of the two top picks? Saying that the Mavs roster is older. Maybe they're a more win now team. Dan says, is there any possibility or benefit to trading up in the draft? Could they do something like packaging their two lower picks and some combo of Jrue, KP, and Hauser for a top 10 pick? So Dan, no, I don't say that that's how it's worked. You don't go into the top 10 with 28 and 32 and Holiday and Porzingis and Hauser to get a top 10. That's not something that I think would work. So bottom line, quick answer is I don't see them moving up in the draft. The Spurs, maybe. And I say maybe like because I don't think it's 0%, but it's close. The Mavs, I was joking, and I can see some, just because they traded Luka and got to this point, I can see Nico Harrison doing something crazy. But I don't think, and everybody that I've heard is like, no, Mavs are taking that pick. They're not gonna trade Luka and pass on Cooper Flag. Like, that's just not how it's gonna go. So I don't think Jaylen Brown to the Spurs for the second pick is gonna happen. But you make the call, maybe. I don't think that's gonna happen. I don't think the Celtics move up in the draft. I don't think that's possible. I don't think it's feasible, which is also saying the same thing as possible. I don't think so. Elias, or it's a Greek name, Elias. I was thinking about the situation with the luxury tax and wondering if an NBA player can redo their contract to lower the cap hit like the NFL. No, you cannot. There is one instance of renegotiating and extending in certain circumstances. You can renegotiate the final year of a deal and extend off of that. That is generally done the opposite way, to increase somebody's salary and then add an extension. Let's just say Derek White was making a lot less, and you say, okay, we're going to renegotiate the final year. We're going to give you an extension off of that. You can do that. There's no going to Jayson or Jaylen being like, okay, let's cut your cap hit down to $40 million apiece instead of $56 million. That will get us under the second apron. We get to keep everybody, but we're going to backload it. We'll give you another guaranteed year and bonuses and blah, 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 blah. You cannot do that. So Celtics NBA contracts are guaranteed unless otherwise noted with certain non-guarantees. But once you sign a guaranteed deal, that's the deal. That's it, with rare exception. Christoph asks, is it possible to get an injured player exception for Tatum next season? I think only if he misses the entire season. So, and the problem is that still counts against the tax, still counts against the cap. So you might be able to, if the Celtics determine that Tatum will not return that season, the doctors agree, and he will miss the entire season because of that. They can apply, and they may apply. And I think if he's ruled out for the season, the Celtics will apply for an exception to have it in their back pocket just in case. And they'll see how the season goes. And if at the deadline they need to acquire somebody using that or sign a free agent, a buyout guy using that, they can do that. But That's it's probably not going to happen if he's coming back at all next year. You have to be gone for the rest of the season. Sophie, we'll wrap it up with Sophie. I think we'll see more playing time for some of the bench guys. Who do you think will most likely be able to earn more rotation minutes and develop into a key player off the bench? I think the obvious choice is Baylor Scheierman, who has, he really progressed nicely over the course of the year. He had some nice moments. He's got good size, good passing ability. Obviously, knocking down some shots was very important and getting him that confidence. Not that he ever lacked the confidence, but every rookie faces a crisis of confidence at some point. So I feel like he's the guy that you can look at and be like, okay, Scheierman. In fact, I think you're kind of counting on that. Whatever you get for Holiday, I think ultimately the perfect scenario would be Scheierman steps into the Sam Hauser role. Whoever the Celtics acquire for Holiday, at worst, slides into the Scheierman role and maybe a better version of the Scheierman role, or like a second Hauser role or something like that. But if Scheierman can step into the Sam Hauser spot and that kind of spot becomes like a wild card, maybe it's a big, maybe it's a different kind of player, maybe it's a guard. That kind of that would allow the Celtics a lot of flexibility. So Scheierman's my guy, and then I don't see much else. Like, I don't know if Drew Peterson might be able to compete for a spot. He was a two-way player, so he might be able to compete for a guaranteed spot. I don't know about JD Davison. I think I don't know. We'll see how Davison comes back. Maybe Davison surprises. I'm not going to rule him out, but I'm not hopeful with him. I say Scheierman's the guy. Once again, questions can come in. JohnKaralis.com/mailbag. JohnKaralis.com/mailbag. That's how you get your questions in. These podcasts will be much more regular during the off season here. Once a week, probably. If I can do mailbag Mondays, I will. Otherwise, if something else big happens, then that will take precedence, obviously. But right now, this is a Mailbag Friday. So maybe we turn around on Monday and do another mailbag. If you have enough questions come in, JohnKaralis.com/mailbag. I can do that. We'll play it by ear. I play a lot of things by ear, obviously. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching the show. Thank you for being an everydayer. If you're with me every Monday through Friday, you everydayers are the best. I love you. I loved meeting all of you during the course of the season. I hope to meet more of you when the season starts back up. Thank you so, so much. If you're not an everydayer, become one by subscribing, by listening, by watching, by hopping into the comment section. Join the everydayers in the comment section and have some fun discussing the Celtics. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to get into, and I'll be doing so 5 days a week here on the podcast. So make sure you're subscribed. And I would love it if you shared the podcast and told everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.